4 penalties, 3 race weekends, 1 driver, and Lewis Hamilton finally said the words his fans have been screaming since 2021. Every opportunity I give those stewards, every single time they give me a penalty. Silverstone, a false start caught by a machine with no eyes. Hungary, a grid drop for a warning his own team gave him too late. And then a penalty for going 0.1 kilometers per hour over the pit limit, a margin no human being can feel. Spa, a 5-second penalty for a lap 1 incident that George Russell himself called racing. 4 times, 3 weekends, and every single time, the same 7-time world champion who's been racing for 19 years just happened to be the one the stewards reach for. This isn't a bad month. This is a pattern going back 5 years, and it started the night the FIA admitted, in writing, that it stole his 8th title. Lewis Hamilton doesn't say things like this by accident. After the Hungarian Grand Prix, after his 3rd penalty of the weekend, he didn't vent about one decision. He indicted the whole institution.
Is it your qualifying, your Saturdays, or...?
Yeah, useless. Absolutely useless.
Every opportunity I give those stewards, every single time they give me a penalty. That sentence only makes sense if you go back further, because this isn't the first time Hamilton has said it out loud. Following the 2021 Abu Dhabi finale, the race where race director Michael Massey's handling of the late safety car cost him an 8th world championship, Hamilton stood in front of the press and named the problem directly.
Who feel that they still need answers as to what happened at the last race, to trust the governance of Formula One and watch it in a trusting way again.
Well, what I would just say is that there are changes being made, and I welcome the changes that are being made. Of course, we need to make sure they're actioned. And I had a good meeting with Mohammed, who's the president of the FIA, and there is a report, and we agree that it's important to have transparency, so people will get to see this and know that the sport is moving in the right direction. That's all I can really say.
Racing drivers, some are very, very good friends with certain individuals. Some travel with certain individuals and take a more keen liking to some. And before that, in Russia, 2021, after a harsh 10-second penalty for practice starts outside the designated area, he said it even more bluntly. They're trying to stop me, aren't they?
Yeah, of course it is. They're doing everything. Of course it is. But it's not to be expected. They're trying to stop me, aren't they? So.
You really think so?
Of course.
3 different years, 3 different penalties, the same sentence. Over and over, they are trying to stop me. When one driver says that across half a decade, fans don't hear paranoia. They hear a man who has done the math. And the 2026 penalties themselves are worth sitting with individually, because each one carries its own sting. Take the Hungary qualifying penalty, a 3-place grid drop for impeding Oscar Piastri. Hamilton wasn't reckless. He was late. His own team told him Piastri was closing in only moments before the Australian arrived, leaving him almost no time to react. The stewards ruled the driver is always responsible for compromising another car's lap, no matter how the information reached him. So Ferrari's mistake became Hamilton's punishment. That's the kind of ruling that doesn't just cost positions on a grid. It costs trust in the idea that intent and circumstance matter at all. For millions of Hamilton fans, this isn't a debate about telemetry, it's a debate about trust, and trust was broken in one specific moment. Abu Dhabi, December 2021, final lap. The safety car procedure was torn up in real time by a race director who the FIA later admitted committed human error. The result stood anyway. The record that would have put Hamilton above Michael Schumacher forever. Gone by a decision the governing body itself confessed was wrong and then simply left in place. That's the lens fans watch every race through now. And it isn't just Abu Dhabi. In 2022, the FIA suddenly enforced a decades-old ban on jewellery and piercings mid-season, and Hamilton was the only driver on the grid who wore them. It became such a flashpoint that Sebastian Vettel showed up in the pit lane wearing his underwears over his race suit, mocking the FIA's obsession with Hamilton's body. A rule that existed quietly on paper for years suddenly had teeth aimed at one man's wrists and ears. Fans didn't need a conspiracy board to call that one exactly what it looked like. Then there's the double standard fans track race by race. When Max Verstappen dives inside with no space and no mercy, the stewards call it hard racing. When Hamilton makes the same move, it's a number. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 3 places. At Spa, his lap 1 contact with Russell cost him 5 seconds. In the same race, Charles Leclerc hit Piastri and walked away clean, protected by the letter of a space entitlement rule that somehow never seems to protect Hamilton the same way. Even Sky commentator David Croft, calling the race live and not known for taking sides, said the Hamilton penalty felt harsh. Every one of these moments is a separate data point. Stack them up over 5 years and you don't get coincidence. You get a pattern, and Hamilton's fans have been keeping the receipts since Abu Dhabi. But here's what most people miss. The FIA doesn't hand out pit lane speeding penalties. A timing loop does. A sensor embedded in the asphalt measures the interval between 2 points on the track. It has no camera, no name, no memory of Abu Dhabi. It measures a speed, and if that speed exceeds the limit by 0.1 kilometers per hour by any amount at all, the system triggers automatically. There is no steward in that moment. There is no discretion to apply. Frédéric Vasseur, watching from the Ferrari pit wall, believed Hamilton had simply released his limiter a fraction of a second early, likely still recovering from a lockup on the way in. That is not a conspiracy. That is a machine reading 3 decimal places. The false start in Silverstone works the same way. A transponder buried under the grid detects motion before the 5 lights go out. It doesn't know whose car it is. It doesn't weigh a 7-time champion's history against a rookie's. It fires or it doesn't. And when Hamilton protested afterward, the FIA actually conceded elements of his argument about inconsistent start procedures that weekend, a concession that came only after the penalty had already been served, but a concession nonetheless. To understand whether this is really about Hamilton, rewind to the rest of the grid that same Hungarian weekend. Kimi Antonelli, the rookie who inherited Hamilton's own seat at Mercedes, received the identical 3-place grid drop for a yellow flag infringement in qualifying. In Austria, Max Verstappen demanded stewards penalise Hamilton after a hard-fought battle at turn 6. They refused in direct defiance of pressure from Red Bull. Both Mercedes drivers are bracing for the same engine allocation penalties later this season that Hamilton himself expects to take. The 2026 driving standards guidelines raise the enforcement bar for the entire field, not for one car. Lay all of that side by side, and the case for a personal vendetta gets harder to make. The automated systems are, by design, perfectly impartial. They cannot see a helmet, a nationality, or a rivalry. They apply the same threshold to a rookie and a legend. But here's the paradox nobody wants to sit with. Those same systems are also perfectly blind. Blind to context, blind to history, blind to the fact that this particular driver has already watched one governing body admit in writing that it made a catastrophic error against him and never undid it. A timing loop cannot distinguish between a driver who's paranoid and a driver who has receipts. It just measures speed, which brings us to the question nobody in the paddock will ask out loud. If the enforcement is mathematically impartial, then what's, and the data says it is, why does it still feel to Hamilton and to millions of fans? Because impartial and trusted are not the same thing. An institution can apply its rulebook with total consistency and still be read as hostile by the one person it already failed once, at the moment that mattered most, without ever making it right. The telemetry is clean. The history isn't. Both of those things are true at the same time. And that's what makes this bigger than 4 penalties in 3 weekends. So let's name the names. Hamilton says the stewards take a more keen liking to some. The fans say the system is rigged. The data says the system is blind. All 3 can be true at once.